My name is Neil, as Diana mentioned, and I will be going through the webinar with you today. So today's webinar, we're going to primarily focus on the workflow between Revit and Autodesk Inventor, and how a person using Inventor can collaborate with somebody using Revit, and how Inventor data can be used in Revit and vice versa. And so the agenda for today is just going to be just an overview of the Inventor to Revit workflow, and then followed by a Q&A at the end if anyone has any questions. So next slide, Diana. So as I mentioned today, we're going to be just going through the workflow between Revit and Inventor. And so Autodesk a while ago came up with the AnyCAD technology within the software, and with AnyCAD technology, we're able to easily share and collaborate with other CAD models or other CAD file types, right? So when AnyCAD first got introduced, it was primarily working with SolidWorks and Creo, and how we can link those files into our Inventor assemblies, and without converting them and using that native file format. And if something changes in the native format, we're able to then update our Inventor model with the updated changes. And so that workflow, or that AnyCAD functionality, has now been brought over to Revit. So now when I bring in a Revit file into Inventor, it uses AnyCAD technology, where I'm able to link the Revit file directly inside of Inventor, build my mechanical or manufacturing model around that model around that building model as a reference, and then take it back into Revit again to change and make updates, and vice versa. And so in today's example, that's what we'll be looking at. If you could go to the next slide there, Diana. So basically, some of the tools within Inventor that we're able to use to do this is inside of Inventor now, the simplify command within Inventor that allows us to go and simplify those models to be allowed to be used in Revit. And so the simplify command inside of Inventor has really changed and improved now, where I can really control what I want to bring in from Inventor inside of Revit, and I'm able to go in and remove certain details. I'm able to exclude components. I'm able to exclude specific features, and really simplify the model to bring that into Revit. As Revit, in Revit, we don't really need to see the full detailed manufacturing model, and in fact, that would slow down the Revit model. And so we want to really simplify it out of Inventor, but still giving it enough data inside of Revit to distinguish, what our model is. And so we're able to use an improved simplify command to help us do that. Next slide. And so with that, we're able to then, simplify that model. We're then able to create, fast, simplified models that we're then able to use within Revit. So you can see just in the screenshot here, we've got this sort of Inventor model, and that Inventor model can be simplified down and brought into Revit, as you can see in the bottom screenshot there, where that Inventor model is brought in, and then we can lay that out inside of Revit. Next screenshot, or next slide, please. So just this next slide doesn't really pertain too much on the Revit Inventor workflow, but just along the same lines, we're able to then take information from Revit and put it up into Fusion 360 as well. And so with using sort of a similar link to do that, right? So we're able to do that as well. So that technology, that we're able to use between Revit and Inventor can be extended out into other areas of Inventor, one being Fusion as well. Next slide. And then that interoperability also allows us to go in and put manufacturing information on some of our models as well. And so if we're able to, when we're able to, we need to provide manufacturing information right on the 3D model, we're able to do that type of workflow and export with that type of data on the model as well. So, that functionality sort of extends past out Revit and into the other areas of the software as well. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And what I'm going to actually do now is I'm going to show you sort of a live demo of how Inventor and Revit can communicate, and run through sort of an example of a typical workflow that that an architect would have with a person inside of manufacturing. So let me share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to pull up my screen here. So on my screen here, I've got my Revit model. And right now, we're just looking at the full 3D model. Okay, so inside of Revit, this is sort of our full 3D model of the whole building. If I go to my left-hand side here under 3D views, I've got some predetermined views that I've created of the building. So if I click on this production B view, this is a view from inside the building. And this is actually where we're going to actually place our Inventor model in this view. Okay. And so we'll come back to this view, later on in the workflow. But this is the view that we're gonna actually use to place our Inventor model. Okay, and if I go to this production B coordination view, this is the view that we're gonna actually take and place inside of our Inventor model. Okay, so we're gonna use this view here to place and bring into our Inventor model. And so, just to make things easier, I've kind of predetermined and created these views that we're going to use, throughout the workflow. If I step into Inventor, inside of Inventor, I've got an assembly open here that says Production B. Okay, and right now this is a blank,
Anil, sorry to interrupt. It seems that we're unable to see the screen on your end. So do you want to try, I guess, stop sharing and then we can retry it again?
Yep, give me 1 second. Sorry, I didn't pick entire screen, so. Can you see that now?
Okay. I can see it on my end. If everyone can throw a little comment on the chat just to confirm that you can see it on your ends as well. I think we're good to go, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just go back to the Revit portion of this just in case we weren't able to see that part of it. But so just on the Revit side of things, I was just showing, what I've got in Revit. So this is the Revit model that we're going to be working with. This is the building, the full version or the full view of that building. I've created some additional views that we're going to be using throughout the workflow. So this production B workflow is where the view we're going to use to place the Inventor model in. And then this production B coordination view is the view that we're going to use to place inside of our Inventor model. Okay, so I'm going to minimize from here and I'm going to go into Inventor. So in Inventor, I have an assembly open, and I'm in a view inside of Inventor called Production B Coordination. And all I've done in this view, I've just turned off all the model, some of the model that's already inside of here, just so that we can place our Revit model inside of Inventor. And to place our Revit model inside of Inventor, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to say place imported CAD files. Okay, and when I do that, I'm able to now come inside of Inventor, or sorry, come inside of Inventor and pick my Revit file that I want to bring in. So we're going to start off by bringing in this file here, and I'm going to select Open. And what that's going to do is it's going to load all the elements from the Revit model into Inventor. And so you're going to see here in a minute or two where it's going to load the list of all the different Revit elements inside of Inventor. And you'll see when this loads up that I'm able to go in and then pick, specific elements. I can pick, maybe I just want to bring in all the walls, or maybe I want to bring in just the structure, the structural elements, or the interior elements, right? So I'm able to do all that within here, as you'll see in a second when this opens up. And depending on the size of the Revit model, sometimes this can take a minute or two to get to bring everything in. But once it's in, we're able to then load it into our Inventor model and bring that in. So the scenario that we're going to have here as this brings in, and as you can see, so it's generated the view now. You can see here, in this list, I've got all the different categories that I can bring in. Gives me a preview of what's going to be what's going to be brought in. And you can see the import type. I've got two different import types. So I can say reference model or convert model, right? So convert model will bring the Revit model in and just convert it into an Inventor multi-body part, right? And so if I do convert model, it's not going to have any link back to the Revit model, right? It's just going to convert that over right into Inventor. But if I say reference model, right, it's going to link in the Revit model directly into the Inventor assembly. So that Revit model is still going to have a link back to Revit, right? So I can then go into Revit, make changes, and update the Inventor assembly with those building changes. Now, in terms of what we're going to bring into Inventor, so in Revit, I showed you those 3 views. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in this production B coordination view. Okay, so I can select by 3D view as to which view I want to bring into Inventor. So if I click on this view here, it's going to then load that view up. So there's the view that I want, right, to bring into Inventor. So if I click OK, it's now going to load this view into Inventor. And while this is loading, so just the scenario that we're going to have here. So the scenario that we're going to have here inside of the demo I'm going to show you is, I'm going to bring this building in. I'm going to turn on my Inventor model that I've already got created in here. And there's going to be some interference and some clashing that we want to sort of take care of as part of this workflow. Okay, so there's my model, right? So my Revit model. So I'm going to right click on this Revit model. I'm going to say place at grounded origin. Okay, and as you can see here, I'm going to just say OK to this and accept the command. So in here, you can see that I've got my Revit model inside of here, and it's linked right inside of Inventor. Okay, so obviously for this demo, I'm not going to create the Inventor model. So I've got a view here where I've got the Inventor model already in here. So I'm going to just double click on that view. And you can see that there's my Inventor model kind of placed right in here. And the reason why it knows to do that is it's sharing the same coordinate system. And so that's how this kind of knows. So if I zoom in here to this area here, you can see that I've got a little collision between this crane, okay, and that duct, right? So I want to sort of take care of that collision, right, by collaborating with the architect. In fact, if I were to just go in here and take this crane and just drive the motion, you can see that as it moves, it's going through that top duct, right? As that crane moves through and rotates around. Okay. So, in order for me to take this back or bring this into Revit, what I want to do then is I want to now take this Inventor model and bring that back into Revit so that I can see where that interference is and take care of that interference. Okay. So in order for me to do that, what I'm going to do is I've got another view inside of Inventor that I've already created. And that view is called Revit Export. So if I double click on that view, it's going to just take me to this view here. Okay, you can see that a lot of the other elements of that Inventor assembly are gone. And in this view, what I want to actually do is I want to turn off the visibility of the Revit model. Okay, And so now I'm just left with this. So this is what I want to bring into Revit, all these elements, okay? And so in order to bring this into Revit, I don't want to bring this in just as is, right? You can see that there's detail in here that I don't need to really see inside of Revit. And so to simplify this down within Inventor, I'm going to use my simplify command. And my simplify command is going to allow me to simplify this model down and get it prepared to bring into Revit. And so you can see I've got a few different things inside of this simplify command that I can control. So you can see that I can, replace with envelopes, right? So if I were to pick, right now it just says none, but if I wanted to replace each top level component with envelopes, I can do that. So you can see it's just going to represent everything as square boxes, or I can do each part, right? Or all one envelope. We're not going to do that. We're just going to leave the view like this. You can see I have the ability to remove specific features. So if I want to remove holes or fillets or chamfers, any of those types of details, I'm able to remove that on the export or on the simplification part. And then the output, right? So in this particular case, we want to output this out as a RVT file, as a Revit file, right? So we're going to pick, Revit as our output. I can give that, I can give this a name, okay? And a location as to where it's going to save. Now, inside of here, I want to make sure that I have each top level component selected. And the reason for that is because when it comes into Revit, I want to be able to select each of these components as their own entity, right? So I want to say each top level component, right? But if I hit this drop down, I can say all one element if I want to bring it in as one element as well, okay? So again, some of this stuff still has a lot of detail. So I've created a model state view inside of Inventor to remove some of the detail on each of these top level components. So I'm just going to switch to that view, which is called medium. And you'll see when I pick that view, you'll see the Inventor model simplify down a bit, right? So you can see that it's simplified down a bit. Some of the features are gone, and you can see that it's more of a more simplified view that I'm able to now bring in. Okay, so once I've got my model prepared and ready for export, I'm simply going to select, and you also want to make sure that this enable updating is turned on, because that will do is it'll allow me to update the Revit model once I bring it back. So I'm going to click OK, and what we're going to do is we're going to create our simplified part, right? So it's just asking me, I have one there already. It's just asking me, do I want to override it? I'm going to say yes to override it. Okay, so it's now preparing the Revit model from Inventor. So this Inventor model is now being exported to an RVT file. So once this is done, we're gonna then step back into Revit. Okay, so it's just telling me that this Revit model was created. Okay, and now it's brought back in. So now we're gonna step back into Revit. So if I go to Revit, and I'm gonna go to my production B view, which is this view here. And in this view is where we're gonna place the Inventor model that we just exported, okay? And so if I go back inside of Revit, if I click on my insert and I click on this link Revit, okay? What I wanna do is I'm gonna pick the Revit file I just created, which is this one here, the simplified part out of Inventor, and I'm going to select Open. And you can see that it's brought that Revit model into Inventor. And again, it knows to place it in the correct location, because when we did the initial creation of these models, we made sure that they're using the same coordinate system. So that's how it knows. And if you look here, just where my cursor is, you can see that there's that interference that's happening there. Now, in Revit, we want to make that, we want to adjust this duct so that that interference is no longer there anymore. And so to do that, you can see on my left-hand side, I've got a view, I've got a floor plan here that says ground floor, right? So if I double click on that floor plan called ground floor, and let me just turn off or close some of these views here, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go here and I'm going to just do a tile view so that we can see these side by side. So there's my ground floor. And if I zoom into this ground floor, okay, this is the duct that we want to actually move over, right? So inside of Revit, if I, click on this duct, right now it's at 5,000 millimeters. I want to change this to 3,000, okay? So by doing that, now moved that duct, okay? And if I close this ground view down, you can see that that interference is no longer there anymore because I've moved the duct over a little bit, okay? So now that I've made that change inside of Revit, I now need to go back into Inventor and make and populate my Inventor model with that updated change that I've made inside of the Revit model. So in order for me to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to save my Revit model so that the updates kick in. Okay, and if I go to Inventor now, you're going to see inside of Inventor, I've got this little update symbol beside the Revit model because now the Revit model requires an update, right? So for me, in order for me to do that, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn back the visibility of the Revit model. Okay, so there's my visibility of that Revit model. And you can see in here, there's still, in Inventor, that interference is still there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to update my Inventor assembly so that it pulls in the changes of the updated Revit model that I've just updated. So it's now updating. You'll see in a second that my Revit model is now going to update based on the change that I've made inside of Revit. You'll see that in a minute here as my Revit model populates Inventor with the update. And then we'll rotate the crane around again to see if that clash is still there. Okay, so you can see that duct, how that duct moved over. You can see that there's no visibility, no clash there, but just to double check, let's just drive this constraint again, just to make sure. And you can see that I've got full clearance now when I rotate that crane, right? There's no interferences anymore with that duct. Okay. And so now I've successfully collaborated with the architect to see those changes, right? So that's an example of a workflow that I can have between Inventor and Revit. Obviously, I'm able to, do this with other types of examples as well, right? Anything that I need to put in a building that's that requires something that's coming from Inventor, I'm able to collaborate in this way, right? So if you think of things like escalators, or you think of things like elevators or railings, or HVAC units, or any element, any manufacturing element that you need to place into a building, that would require some sort of collaboration with the architect in terms of its placement. In this scenario, I've got a factory where I'm placing machinery in, right, that has cranes, right? I need to collaborate with the architect to see, placement of those machines, and to see if there's any collisions with any beams or structural elements, or in this case, duct work, right? This workflow is very effective.